so and we're so fortunate to have OLLI in the Berkshires. And that, as many of you know, came about because we had Berkshire Institute for Lifelong Learning first. And it was a few intrepid souls who were involved in those early years of Berkshire Institute for Lifelong Learning that recognized they needed to change up the model a little bit, to get some additional support to help the organization grow. So they went from low hundreds of members, and now you're 1,300 strong. And it was those intrepid souls that reached out to the Osher the Osher Foundation and when they learned about the OLLI that were across the country. So we're one of, I think, 3 community colleges in the whole Osher network that is associated with an OLLI. And we see that as such a badge of honor and are so delighted to have all of you connected. I'm just about to start my 9th year as president at Berkshire Community College. I don't know how much any of you know about Berkshire Community College, so I want to spend a few minutes talking about that a little bit. So the community college movement really hit its stride. It was after, as World War II was ending, the Truman Group was put together. President Truman put a group together to look at how are we going to educate all of these people coming out and the children that will come from all of these individuals who fought in our war, and there wasn't enough capacity in the current 4-year institution structure. And that is really how the community college concept came into be. There were 2-year colleges and that existed. Joliet, it is usually considered the very first 2-year college in outside of Chicago, and that was in the early 1900s, but it's really the 1960s that things hit their stride. So Berkshire Community College is turning 60, is the oldest community college in Massachusetts. It was the first one established, which is always a surprise to people. And it was because of our own then Representative Tom Wojtkowski, who had the concept, and he was someone who came out of the military and recognized that this new concept was out there and Massachusetts needed to develop something. And he wanted to bring higher education opportunity to Pittsfield because he felt particularly Pittsfield didn't have that. So he fought very hard. He partnered with a senator on the Cape, which is why Cape Cod Community College is the 2nd community college in Massachusetts. And they worked really hard. The college turned 60 in September. We'll turn 60 in September. And what's really fascinating about that was because that was at the very earliest, as this was starting to become a thing, we were actually in a layout in Life magazine. So they came and covered the opening of the college and did a spread of images from that and from other places across the country. So we were in October of 1960. The opening of Berkshire Community College was one of the feature stories in Life magazine in that October. Now the colleges, and there are 15 community colleges in Massachusetts, and they're all within about a 20-year range roughly of when they all opened, and all do wonderful work and have very clear areas in which they serve. So we all have specific areas that were intended to meet the educational and skills and knowledge needs of our respective communities. But obviously people don't have to pay attention to those particular boundaries. They can go wherever it makes sense for them to go. The national information shows that most students travel about 8 miles to attend a community college. So that's the average commute, just 8 miles. And that's fairly close to us, even though we cover a wide swath of geography in Berkshire County. You'd be surprised, so many of our students come from Pittsfield that helps to keep that average down, even for us at Berkshire Community College. The 15 community colleges in Massachusetts each have their own separate board. So we have our own board of trustees that oversees our finances, leadership. They are able to hire, evaluate, and fire the president, which is obviously one of their most important roles. And they approve policy and the college's budget on an annual basis. We have a department of higher ed that has a board of higher ed. So they now would put, if there's a search for a new president at any of our campuses, there's usually a representative from the Department of Higher Ed on the search, so that the board isn't caught surprised by how all this works. Berkshire Community College started out very focused on being those first 2 years of a liberal arts education. The first head of the school was from Tom O'Connell, and he was the head of the school for almost 20 years. He came from Dartmouth, and he brought that approach to higher education to the Berkshires. And it was called a Little Dartmouth on the Hill was how it was referred to in the community. And he was all about paying when we got up to the college. So we first started, I should mention this, down on 2nd Street. If you know Pittsfield and you know the Commons down there on 1st Street, that large building back there was a mothballed school, public school, that the college took over and ran from 1960 until 1972. And from the beginning, the president brought that liberal arts focus, and they would get together on, the whole campus would have to come together on like Tuesday or Thursday, and they would have a presentation, a speaker, a performance. They would have something, and the students would have to write a paper on what they were experiencing that day. So he had a pretty strong bent toward the liberal arts and a real focus in that area. When we get to the 1980s, you started to see a slight shift to more of a career focus. So you see more programs. We even had an auto repair program at the college. And if you've been around OLLI for a number of years, there used to be an old tiered classroom in Hawthorne, not the one we have now, but below that. And that was tiered because it used to be that you could drive in and have your car repaired from the top. And when we took all that out, we recreated that space into a tiered classroom. But a lot of our OLLI classes were there, 6 or 8 years ago. That's where they were held. The college has opened its new campus out on West Street, about 300,000 square feet in 1972. We were probably one of the first of that ilk of campus, the first newer campus, fought hard to have Kuzovitsky, our then Robert Bolin, said, you are not going to open a community college in the Berkshires or build a new campus for a community college in the Berkshires and not have a performance art space. That's what we're about and that's what we need. And so that's why we have a 500-seat, gorgeous, full professional theater in the Berkshires and on our campus, and named for Serge Kuzovitsky. Also, the Patterson Fieldhouse was a bit of a coup to be able to have that built across the road for the campus. That wasn't necessarily high on the state's list of buildings that needed to be constructed. Bob Bolin shared with me once that the reason they could pull off building the Kuzovitsky Center and creating what is now the Bolin Theater, it wasn't named for him until after. He didn't want it to be named for him for a long time, but it was, if you go in and you'll notice, there are actually all of the seats in there have the portable desktop. So you can flip up the desk to have the feet. So we could call those all, that could be a classroom. So that was considered a classroom and it had that much capacity. So it wasn't just a theater. As we roll into, there wasn't a lot of construction or renovation done on the campus until fairly recently. And that was with Governor Patrick coming on board. He set up a $2 billion capital bond bill that was released in 2008. And so that was what allowed us to renovate Hawthorne and Melville halls. And those are big days. We were, I think, the only, if not the only, one of two campuses whose capital projects were strictly about renovating what we had. Almost every other campus wanted to build something new, and we felt we had enough space, but we needed to fix what we had because we hadn't been in a position to invest in it. So we were able to renovate those two spaces. We have another project on the books right now, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but it's a one-stop renovation to create a single place for our students and for businesses to come, our students when they're wanting to register or explore careers or opportunities, and for businesses who are looking for interns or employees. We wanted to create one place they would go. Right now, if you were a student, you were sent sort of from window to window to tell your story, to financial aid, to academic advising, to admissions, to student financial services, to the registrar. And those were all done out in the hallway. So even some pretty personal information about what might be happening in your life was happening out in the hallway. So this new model will provide a great deal more privacy, but it will also bring those services to the students instead of making the student go around and do it. So that sort of leads me into talking a little bit about what's about to happen. So I'm trying to think does anyone have any questions so far about what has gone on at the college that you were hoping I might cover?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay.
And I have two to ask you, but why don't you keep going on what is going to happen? And then we'll talk a little about impact of COVID and something that you said very important about board member responsibilities.
I just want to comment on the chat from Louise Frankenberg that her dad, Bill Hurt, was an engineer at General Electric. There was such a tight connection between General Electric and Berkshire Community College early on at the campus. And we once had 8 faculty members teaching engineering at the college, plus a whole group of volunteers, probably Bill Hurt as part of that group. And we had people advocating for those students. So our students were going from us to Purdue, from us to Northeastern. And even now at General Dynamics, I meet people all the time who started out at Berkshire Community College and then were in that pipeline to go on to one of those 4-year institutions to complete their engineering degree. We're in the midst right now. We've Gary Bradway, our long time faculty member, is just retiring. He's the last of that group. So he would have been the youngest when many of those early pioneers in engineering joined us, and now he's going out to retire. We brought in a second member last year, Jose Colmenes, and we're in the midst of making an offer to a new faculty member who would start this fall. And we've also redesigned our workforce area. So if you've been paying much attention, you might have noticed that both One Berkshire and Berkshire Mass Hires have created 2 different blueprints, but they have a lot of overlap because a lot of the same people did them both. And the Mass Hires one was at the urging of the governor. He asked each region in the Commonwealth to really, and he provided funds to do this, really do a deep dive on what their needs were, what their workforce needs were, and to develop a plan to address those workforce needs. So in the Berkshire blueprint, identified allied health, so nursing, those areas, advanced manufacturing, and hospitality and tourism as the 3 key areas for the Berkshires to focus on. And we just changed our whole workforce area to reflect this. So we have directors in each of those areas, and they're working hard to develop. So I bring that up because we hired Paul Mattingly, the director of workforce for advanced manufacturing, and he'll be working with those faculty members who in turn, we all work very closely with the Berkshire Innovation Center. So all of what we do at the college is really intended to align with what the community needs are in Berkshire County. So just as OLLI pays really close attention to what do our members want, we pay really close attention to both what do our students want, but what do our employers want? What do our employers need in Berkshire County, and what programs do we need to be offering? And so that's really how we go about developing all of that. We also look at having advisory boards for our programs that are made up of professionals in those areas. So we have an advisory board made up of people in the allied health field. So from Berkshire Health Systems, from many of the assisted living programs, who help us identify what are the particular skills, what are the workforce needs, what do we need to be doing. So that is really how we evaluate the programs we offer, and we move programs in and out as we realize that the needs of the county are changing and we need to change with them. So there's that. Related,
Ellen, I'm sorry. You do have a question from Richard Slutzky about, can you share the trajectory of the number of students and how many students you have now?
Sure. So as you might imagine, in those earliest days, I think our first graduating class, which would have been the 60th graduating class this year, we had 2 transfer students, one from LaSalle and one from UMass Amherst, who graduated in that very first year. The college's enrollment has sort of reflected Berkshire County. So we started out a little bit slow. We grew to over 2,000. In the height of the last recession, we had about 2,700 students enrolled at Berkshire Community College. That would have been around 2010 or 2011. Today, we probably have 1,300 students, 1,400 students. It'll depend. We'll see what this fall brings for a head count. What we tend to do in higher education to keep the field level is we tally up all the credits that all of our students register for, and then we just divide by the number 15. And that gives us what we call the full-time equivalency for each semester, so that we can be fair and look at something evenly. So last fall, we might have had 980 full-time equivalents. We might have had 16 or 1700 head count, individual students taking classes. 2/3 of our students attend part-time. That's not always the best way to pursue college, because it makes it difficult to complete sometimes when you're juggling so many different responsibilities. And 2/3 of our students are female, and 25 or 26%, give or take, our students are people of color enrolled at the college. The average age is about 27 years old. We have students who are homeschoolers, 16 years old, taking their science classes with us, and they count as both college and high school equivalency courses. And then we have individuals who are great-grandparents who are taking programs, courses with us. So we run the whole gamut and have people with all different reasons and intentions, some to just the love of learning and taking classes, some to figure out what they want to do next, some who are in career transition, some who's, if we at our orientation asked our students, how many of you are here because you're going to transfer someplace else, the majority of students would raise their hand and say, I'm planning to transfer. Strongest program is nursing. That's our largest program, our nursing program and our pre-nursing program. And this January, we'll be introducing a second cohort for our nursing program. So right now, the nursing program starts every fall in September. And come this January, we'll be launching a new group of students in our nursing program. And so it'll start in January and finish up in December, and in 2 years. So the ADN, the Associate Degree in Nursing program, takes a little over 2 years to complete.
I think you just hit on this, Ellen, but Val Fox says hello in the chat, and she says, what programs are driving the most growth and have the highest demand at BCC, and what are the biggest labor market gaps and skills you're looking to fill with new programs in the future?
It's great to see you on the call, Val. I'm excited to see your name pop up. You're right, I talked a little bit about it. Nursing is our largest program, and so if you had been paying attention, we had a little hiccup in nursing a few years ago, and last fall we didn't bring in a first-year class of nursing. So the nursing runs a first year and a second year simultaneously every year, and we were anticipating not having a second year class this year. The first year students, we would be bringing in a first year class and we wouldn't have a second year class. And we discovered that there were a lot of individuals who have their LPN, their licensed practical nurse, their practical nurse designation, and have sat successfully for the NCLEX, who have been through our program or other programs, who are interested in coming in, and they're gonna spend a whole year, which is what they normally do. We have students like this all the time joining us to complete their associate's degree in nursing. They just do that second year. They come in though at the end of August and do I think a 2-week bridge program, because there's a little bit of content that you don't cover in the LPN program that you do cover in the first year of the ADN program. So we have that group. We have a physical therapy assistant program that was on a 2-year cycle. So we would start it and it would run the full 2 years, and then we'd start it again. And we discovered that there was a growing need for more frequently for students coming through that program. And so now we have slightly made the class a little bit smaller. So instead of taking 30 students, we were taking 20, but now we'll take 20 students every year. So we'll have a first year and a second year group every single year and be graduating students every year from that program. We're working on a cybersecurity retooling certificate and leading to a degree, an associate's degree, and all of these pipeline to 4-year institutions and beyond. And we are, our human services program, there's a lot of urgent need in the county for individuals in the mental health field. You can't do very much in that field without a lot of certification, but we're hoping to pipeline more students through that program. We have a lot of articulation agreements with 4-year institutions to support that. We're also launching, we have a respiratory therapy assistant program, and that also is offered at 2 years at a time. You hit the right cycle and you do it for 2 years, and then we start it again. And we were a little bit the last few years, we haven't seen as much interest. These are really rigorous programs, haven't seen as much interest in those programs, but we're anticipating that with COVID-19 and all of the attention being paid to respiratory therapy, there may be people interested in that, and that would start in January. The decision to align our workforce team with the 3 areas that were identified through a lot of research for Berkshire County is also intended to provide some non-credit that would lead to 4-credit, either certificate or degree programs that we hope will be addressing for the county. So areas are growing in that. We have a new member, for a faculty member, who will be joining us in the fall for our hospitality program. And we also have a new person in workforce development, Jay Baver, and he ran our fast track hospitality program this summer that went from being totally in person to completely online in a matter of weeks. So those are some of the areas that we're doing. So
that's a lot of areas, Ellen. And one of the things you said is that the average student travels about 8 miles to the community college. How has COVID impacted that? And do you see, different people coming now because they can? And have you seen any change in the demographics since COVID?
So let me just step back a little bit and tell you how we responded initially to COVID and then where we're headed. And then I see Louise has a question about certificate versus degree program, but let me talk about how we're dealing with COVID. So a while back, we really made a commitment into our, we had a Center for Teaching and Learning, and we had a director of that center, and we decided to really go all in. We promoted that individual to the dean of the Center for Teaching and Learning, the dean of Teaching and Learning Innovation. We added a second full-time instructional designer to that program, and we provided an opportunity for faculty to apply for to be the co-lead of that program and have release time to devote to working with faculty. So this is all in the last year or two. So we had been working really closely with all of our faculty on how to use the technology, on how to think about pedagogy, on how to look at their teaching and assess it. And as COVID-19 hit, and we were making that, I hate to use the word because we're all sick of it, but pivot from being fully almost fully on the ground face-to-face to suddenly a lot more reliance, almost total reliance on some form of remote education. We had a little bit, we had incredibly talented people who could work with our faculty to help them do that. So at that beginning, so this is in March, the faculty spent a week in total immersion and then had some individuals who worked with them individually if they were really struggling with how to do this and thinking about how do I finish my semester and help my students complete and have learning outcomes. So everybody had identified learning outcomes. How do we make sure the students actually have those learning outcomes? So we got through all that. We did lose some students in that process. Some, probably the online piece wasn't a great fit. And for some, the managing children out of school are working harder. If you imagine many community college students or community college graduates were actually a lot of the frontline people in the whole COVID-19, from emergency responders to providing allied healthcare nurses, all of that. So we lost some students that way. But many finished, and we provided resources. Our big concern was that a student would be trying to complete their course on their cell phone. And we tried to provide computers to the students so that anyone who needed a computer could get a computer and check it out of our library and use it from home. This summer, that team I mentioned, the Center for Teaching and Learning, developed, in essence, a graduate level 4-week completely online asynchronous course for our faculty members. And 98% of our faculty members took this course this summer. And it was, they became the student. So they had to experience what our students experience all the time. And some of them figured out pretty quickly, some of this was frustrating, the way things were structured and how things were set up. And they would say, I don't like this. And they would show them how to fix things and how to do things. So our faculty became students and really were able to dive very deeply into their teaching. I was speaking with a faculty member yesterday who told me the difference between his course before, the course that he offered online before this course he took this summer, and now is night and day. He's just so thrilled with himself and how far his course has come, and how they all think very differently about their teaching. So that is how we are preparing for the fall. The other thing that we did is create an online, we always had our orientation in person, and that meant that some students couldn't come. It was at a very specific time, and you had to come for that one day. And now we had been planning to do this anyway, but we made sure we did it well, created a completely online orientation for our students who are starting to do it right now instead of waiting until the weekend before school starts. They also are taking like how to be a successful online remote learning student to really help make sure that they have a good foundation and they understand how it works. I once had the experience of chatting with a student at an event who told me that she was taking an online course because she could devote Sunday nights to it. And I had to say, oh, no, that's not how it works. You've got to be, almost every day in on your online course, or you're not going to be a successful online learner with that. So we're also using some of our CARES Act money. You've probably been hearing about CARES Act. We're using some of our CARES Act funds to provide an incentive to the students who successfully complete that online orientation course, to help make sure that they do it and feel some mastery over how all this will work. So I don't know if you have questions specifically about the COVID-19 and its impact on the college. I think OLLI has been a textbook of how to effectively respond to COVID-19 in this day and age, and how quickly people learned. I was sending out Megan's guidance to our board members, to the campus, as she provided to the board members, first of OLLI, and then to all the members, how you got comfortable with using Zoom, even just how to use Zoom. So it's been amazing and an honor and a pleasure and a real moment of pride to see how OLLI responded to COVID-19.
Yeah, that's a lot of information, and it sounds like you have had a very busy summer, right? More planning than you had planned to do. One of the things that you touched on when you gave your introduction, and yes, yay, Megan and team, was you talked about your administrative structure and that you have a board and you have a higher education council. So I just want to, I know that many in this group probably do serve as volunteers and are very busy in volunteerism in the nonprofit community, but you said something really important that I just want to underscore, and then maybe you can give a little insight into how that works. Basically, the board, if you're a board member of any nonprofit, you have two major responsibilities. It is to hire, fire, and evaluate the executive director, and to approve the finances. And a lot of times people think it's really nice to be on a nonprofit board and I'll make friends and they do good work, but you are actually fiduciary responsible when you step up as a board member. So, I just thought you might want to talk a little bit more about that, Ellen, about how you brief your board, how how people come to the board, what kind of people, and that whole part of being volunteerism in terms of Berkshire Community College.
Sure, and thank you. There were two questions from Louise that I just wanted to answer, and then I'll absolutely focus on. So Louise asked earlier about the certificate and the degree pursuit. So I will be honest and tell you that for a very long time, the college was concerned, and I kind of inherited this when I got there, but the college was concerned about the certificates leading people to finish too early, not to complete a 2-year degree, an associate degree. So there weren't very many certificates for a pretty long time. A while back, the Commonwealth started to incentivize that in a performance funding budget, that certificates were treated the same as degrees for campuses when you were looking at completion rates. And so people were very quick to start to rethink how all of that worked. We also discovered, for example, our human services, all of our programs do at least every 5 years, sometimes more frequently, a complete program review. And they look at all the data associated, their curriculum. Is it still appropriate for what the needs are in our community, or the needs are if you wanted to transfer to a program, and all that kind of thing. And it turned out that every student in our human services was actually completing their certificate on the way to completing the degree, but they weren't being credited with that certificate. And to all of us who have have witnessed students who have had issues that slow them down in their pursuit of a degree. Having a credential is really important. So helping our students earn those certificates along the way of their degree, it's just one more piece that they can add to their resume, to their arsenal of preparing to enter a field or to transfer. So we're seeing a growing number of certificates being approved. And for some people, that's how they dabble first in it. 2 years of full-time study can seem like an awful lot of time, and it might be 5 or 6 years if you have to do it part-time, whereas a certificate might be a much shorter period of time. And oftentimes our students discover that they're really good students. They didn't know that about themselves. Maybe like the K-12 wasn't a great fit, so their experience with formal education wasn't necessarily the most positive one. And then they come to us and suddenly it's all on them. They're there because they want to be there, and they discover that this is where they're meant to be, that they're really smart and successful learners, and they go through and they can't stop. They want to keep going. I think you also asked about anyone can take a course, and we actually have a reduced rate for people, I think over 55, don't hold me to the number, but it's, we have a reduced rate. You might pay for 1 credit instead of the 3 credits. It's I forget what it is, but we do have a reduced rate, and anyone can take classes. And if you want to make sure you get a seat in a class that's going to fill quickly, you can pay the full rate and get in earlier, but you can wait. I think it's 2 weeks before that you can register for anything you're interested in, and you can audit it. You still pay if you audit it, but you don't have to do any of the papers like OLLI, or you can do all of the assignments and get feedback. So it does work that way.
And that dovetails nicely with a question from, oh, the chat's getting active. That dovetails nicely with a question from Louise on, is the BCC catalog online now, and can one take a full course completely online?
Yes, and if you go on to our on our website, and maybe Megan can find this, but there's a way to search and it tells you which courses are fully online, which are hybrid. So it might be, so there's hybrid face-to-face. It explains all this on the website. There's hybrid, which are face-to-face hybrid, where you might come to the college 1 day a week and meet with your faculty member. And then there's hybrid like this with a Zoom session at a certain time. So that would be a synchronous course where you actually are meeting at a set time. We've encouraged our faculty to do as much asynchronous, which means the student can't. So just like right now, we're doing a synchronous course with OLLI because we're all here together. If we had pre-recorded this and you could go in at any time and watch the interview or whatever, then that would be asynchronous. I'm sorry, that would be, yes, that would be asynchronous, and that would be sort of fully online. That's a fully online course. So you can look on our website and it tells you, and then you can pick which one you want and see which courses are offered. You can search by faculty member, you can search by the format that the course is being offered in, and find any courses that we offer that way.
And Megan has posted that link in the chat box. And I'm going to invite Richard Slutzky to unmute himself and ask his own question. How about that? Are you comfortable with that, Richard?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, sorry, it was a bit of a long-winded question via text, but I was curious. I had seen information, you know, what obviously COVID is affecting all college-age students in different ways, and what I had heard was that a lot of some students who had been accepted to 4-year colleges were, you know, if their tuition, I'm making this up, but if their tuition and room and board was going to be $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, and their college or university decided that they were not going to have in-person classes, at least for the fall semester, that, you know, some parents of the students were thinking, you know what, I'll send my kid to a local community college for maybe this, you know, next year, and then maybe later on, you know, we'll send them to the 4-year school. And I was just curious if that's been the case at Berkshire Community College, if there's been any, you know, movement with transfer students coming from 4-year colleges who are just, you know, trying to duck the high tuition that they would pay for essentially online classes. Just curious.
Yep. So we're seeing a little bit of that. I think the financial aid awards are just going out. So families are figuring out this is what we're going to pay, and maybe a reality is setting in. One of the things inside baseball, right? But one of the things I shared with our faculty was this was really our moment, because there may be families out there who will decide, hey, let's give this a shot. Let's go up and see what happens with Berkshire Community College. And we've had so many students over the years who've come back and said to us, those were the most formative, the most important, the most rigorous of all of my years of college were the ones I spent at Berkshire Community College, those first couple of years that established those first 2 years of a 4-year degree. And what we're trying to do is make sure that every student who comes to us has an excellent education, a rigorous education, and walks away thinking, wow, I think I'll just stay and finish these first 2 years and save my family. So to give a context to all this, it's a little over $6,000 a year for a full-time student at Berkshire Community College. So you could conceivably complete with your books and everything, the first 2 years of your 4-year degree, get your associate's degree. So you've got a credential that we talked about earlier for about $14,000 maybe total if you were paying all of it yourself. We give away our foundation. The college has a wonderful foundation, and we give away about $300,000 in scholarships every year too. So there aren't a lot of people who are paying completely out of pocket. A lot of people are getting some form of financial support. So that is our hope, and we're paying attention to that. How many students are either students who are deferring, they were going someplace else and they've decided to just begin with us, or students who have decided, I'm going to take a little break here before returning to my 4-year institution, and I'll pick up some of my foundational courses, my liberal arts courses, some of my science courses. I'll take them with us. We are mostly in this remote form of education. Our nursing program, our physical therapist program, our labs for most of our sciences are all face-to-face, and we've put all kinds of things in place. So a lab for biology that may have traditionally been 16 students might be 8 students, and we've added a second or third faculty member to teach that. And we have sneeze guards, the plexiglass stands around each of the pieces, the proper plenty of space. So we're doing everything in our power to make sure that students who do have to come to campus feel safe. And I think that students who haven't been on our campus, who are going someplace else, might be pleasantly surprised at the quality of all of our resources on the campus. So I think we'll see some of that. We'll see how much we see. It's something like 40% of students who were intending to go to college this fall are rethinking that, or thinking they are not going to go off to a 4-year institution. We'll see how many of those decide to begin at a 2-year community college. So hope that helps.
Great. Perfect. I don't see any other hands. Do you want to talk? Are people interested in the board member question and how that works? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. So Ellen, why don't we work on that one?
So the Berkshire Community College Board is comprised of 11 members. We have an elected student. For the students, elect 1 member. The governor appoints an alumni representative. The governor appoints, the alumni elect an alumni representative. So you always have at least 2 members of the alumni serving on the Board of Trustees. The other 8 appointments, so we have the student elected, the governor appointing an alumni representative, and the alumni electing a person. The other 8 members of the board are all appointed by the governor. And the governor now, he didn't before, now the governor also appoints the chair of our Board of Trustees. So right now the chair of our Board of Trustees is Darlene Rodowitz, who is the Executive Vice President at Berkshire Health Systems. We have a wonderful, dedicated, focused board. We feel very fortunate to have them. We have a series of committees. So we have a finance committee that studies all the projects, reviews the budget, approves the budget, the audit, all of those kind of work. That's 3 or 4 members of the board. We have an academic affairs and student affairs committee that looks at our academic programming, hears about our workforce development programming, anything related to the student affairs policies and practices. They review all of that. We have an executive committee, as most boards do, that can act in between board meetings. Ours, we haven't had as much of a need for that group to get together, but they would if we needed them. We also have, in essence, it's a governance, but it's the nominations committee for the board. The members serve a 5-year term with 1 opportunity for renewal, and then the governor has to approve that. In years past, we were charged with, the nominations committee would put together a slate of members. We had to submit at least 2 people for each board spot at the college, and you had to be comfortable that either of those 2 individuals could be selected, because that was being chosen at the governor's level. It's gotten a little bit less of that kind of involvement, and more making the decisions of who's going to be on the boards are being made more at the state level, but we still submit our materials every time. We think about what kind of representation we have on our board from every aspect of representation you can imagine. So we talked about alumni representation, but people of color, people with finance experience, people with marketing experience, people who have are in fields of work that are tightly connected with the college and may have some ideas about programming. So we are, thrilled with the board we have. A number of them have completed their full terms, and we're actually waiting for some people to be named to our board right now. So the board meets a minimum of 7 times a year. The meetings are about 1.5 hours long. And now we're doing them completely on Zoom. We were doing them on the college campus. And usually the board starts with, obviously, a review of the minutes. Then we call it the president's report. And then at which point I have a series of short presentations from different people at the college, everything from enrollment to workforce to our TRIO program, other things that we want to make sure the board is aware of, or how we're connecting with the workforce needs of Berkshire County. And then we have usually a presentation from the alumni representative of the board about what our alumni board and our alumni are doing that work. We have our liaison board member to our college foundation, and she would give a report of what the foundation is working on. And then each of the committees that I mentioned earlier, the student trustee gives a report on the students and what activities and events are going on, or issues the students want brought before the board. All of our board meetings are recorded by Pittsfield Cable TV, and they are shown anywhere from 10 to 15 times between meetings. And I think we're the only college in the state system that has that kind of publication, or that kind of opportunity to show what's actually happening at our board meetings. So board members attend events and activities. One of the nice things is at commencements, we have gowns for all of our board members. Our commencement is at Tanglewood. It wasn't this year, but normally it's at Tanglewood. And our board members are on the stage at Tanglewood and really celebrating the students and kind of getting to see the fruits of their labor, so to speak. In a secondary way, the students get to see the ones who get to witness the fruits of their labor, but the board members get to see all their good work reflected in the students who come across the stage. So that's our board.
Yeah, that's great. It's really good to know how boards work and how people get appointed. So I think we have 2 more orders of business. One is to ask Ellen to tell us an unknown fact or something that, might not be out in the public that you'd like to share with this group. So they have a little inside baseball. And then we're going to have Megan briefly talk about the mentoring program for BCC students, which I think would be a nice companion. And then we will, any other questions answer, and we'll end a little early on this beautiful sunny day, if that's okay with everyone. So Ellen, a little inside baseball, any unknown facts or something you can whet your audience's appetite with?
So I gave you a few. I shared with you that we're the first community college in Massachusetts, which is pretty darn exciting. And that we're one of just 3 OLLIs in the country affiliated with a community college, which is a huge point of pride. One thing we shared today at so when all of this happened, when COVID-19 first happened, we started having daily town halls. So every morning, and we would have like 100 people, MPs on these calls. And then when we got to May, we went to 3 days a week. And then we've gone down to 1 day a week. So every Wednesday at 10 a.m., we have a town hall. And we usually have a little over 100 people on each of our town halls, which is pretty wonderful. And at today's town hall, many pieces of very exciting news. I don't want to shortchange anyone. I mentioned TRIO, which is a federally funded program, and Berkshire Community College has had a TRIO program for the last 20 years, and we've been on tenterhooks that it would be renewed for another 5. It's a very competitive process, and we just learned last night that our TRIO program was renewed and is updated, and we're ecstatic about that. That is a program geared to about 160 either first generation socioeconomically challenged or students with disabilities who are members of that. We have a high rate of completion for the students who get to go through our TRIO program. And so it's a very important program to the college. So that was approved. We also, over the last 4 years, we had been raising funds to put in an orchard at the college. And we had raised enough money. So people either to honor or in memory of people had contributed money, and we had 15 trees. So we just installed this late last week, 15 5 apple, 5 pear, and 5 cherry trees on the college campus. We have room for 40 trees, but it'll be beautiful next spring to see these all in full flower. And there actually might even be some fruit this fall on these trees. So we're pretty excited about that. And that's on the East Road. So if you drove straight up and you were heading toward the back of the campus to go toward Melville Hall, it's up on that hillside on the left. There's a beautiful hillside that was all lawn with trees and everything at the top. And now you'll see the first 15 fruit trees. And then we also announced today 6 individuals who had achieved tenure, which is a big deal in higher education. Really proud of those members of our faculty to have received that designation, and some changes in rank from faculty to full professor or to associate professor. So big day on the campus today.
Yeah, very big. Trees are just good news all around. Fruit, environment, prettiness, longevity, really nice. We do have a question from Louise, but why don't we jump to Megan to just talk a bit about the mentoring program and then wrap up with any other questions our OLLI folks may have. Megan?
Great, thank you. And I just want to say that Deb Leonchuk of Berkshire County Action Council,
Community Action,
Community Action Council, yes, had a unavoidable complication, and so she was not able to join us today, which we just found out. So we apologize about not having a second speaker, but I think Ellen Kennedy is a pretty great one. And the other thing I want to point out about the BCC campus is that not only do we now have an orchard, but we also have had a vegetable garden for the past several years that has been used by the cafeteria. So it's a really wonderful place to work, and I look forward to someday working there again in person. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that OLLI has a long-standing mentoring program where OLLI members mentor BCC students, which is really powerful, because when you think about BCC students, these are often individuals coming to really transform their lives, and they're often coming as the first person in their family to go to college, coming out of challenging circumstances. They might be caring for kids or parents or both, have 2 jobs and go to school, and to be able to support them in this journey has been really powerful for OLLI members to do. We haven't heard very much about it via email because we have more mentors than we have mentees, but as we are transforming the mentoring program along with everything else due to the pandemic, we're hoping to have more opportunities for OLLI members to participate. As one OLLI member said, it's the next best thing to grandchildren. And so the wonderful thing is that OLLI members have gotten as much, if not more, out of it as the BCC students. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please send me an email. And certainly as soon as we are able to open it up to more members, we will absolutely do that. And we're also just actually partnered with a new organization called Villages in the Berkshires, which BCC served as the fiscal agent for and is also a partner. And this is a really fascinating collaboration where that will focus on developing volunteers from BCC, from OLLI, and also Villages. And the Villages movement is a sort of retirement community without walls, where it's a community association of older adults who want to continue to live at home, but the association helps provide supports for doing that. So you'll be hearing more about that as well. So it's a wonderful, I think Ellen Kennedy has been an incredible leader for BCC because she is always open to new ideas and is open to change and evolution as new information comes up or there's a need identified. So BCC, as someone who's lived here now for 20 years, has really evolved and really opened up as a community center for learning and connecting, I think, in these past years. So just want to give my kudos to her.
Great, thanks, Megan. Louise, do you want to unmute? I see you have a question in the box about transcripts.
Okay, yes, I think this was BCC. It could conceivably have been a different community college before I moved back to the Berkshires. But when I wanted to sign up for some credit classes, because I wanted to learn the subject matter, I had to dig out my high school transcripts, even though I had a perfectly good college degree. It was a problem trying to find my high school transcripts. I didn't want to just audit the class because I wanted to interact with the instructor. So I'm wondering whether BCC still requires high school transcripts no matter what.
I'm going to check on that, Louise. My husband went through the exact same thing. He's an OLLI member, but decided to take a creative writing course, and he's a practicing attorney. And even his certificate of completing the bar wasn't going to be good enough. Same thing. They wanted his high school transcript. And he's like, how could I get to this place in my life without having completed my high school? So let me check. I'm not sure how that ended up being resolved. And I know we're looking at everything. And the last thing we want to do is create barriers that slow people down in their pursuit of something. So I will check on that for you and we'll get that word out to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, more than welcome.
Yeah, good. I love when there's follow-up. So that's good. We don't always know everything. And Val, do you want to just say your comment out loud about TRIO? Because, I think it's really important during these times when everybody's looking at inequities that BCC is doing more than just looking. They are actively really putting programs in place that do change the balance. And that's really important. So we all say kudos to that. And Val, you want to chime in? Anything you want to say about that?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am in the midst of moving full time to the Berkshires. So it's very exciting. I wish I could be online right now, but literally I'm in the midst of like total chaos as I'm packing and our house is a disaster. And I was kind of embarrassed to show my video. But what I wanted to say is that, I've been working in higher ed, and then I recently did some work with a nonprofit, and it just, when you think of the role that community colleges can play in a community, and when you think of equitable economic recovery on the heels of COVID, I mean, so many people have been disadvantaged before COVID, and now you think like, what is going to happen to these people post-COVID when the service industry and some of these industries have just been obliterated? And so I think it's so exciting to hear that, well, TRIO, who specifically targets this program, targets these audiences. I really do think of BCC and community colleges as the front line for helping these populations get a leg up. And it's going to be more critical than ever on the heels of COVID. And so congrats on that. And if there's anything I or any of us can do to help with that or other things, Ellen, let us know, because I worry so much about those populations, first generation, and people who, really don't have the kind of guidance and insights they need to make better career choices. So, how do we reach them and get them into the right kind of track? So that's all I wanted to share, but exciting news all around, lots of progress. And so excited to be part of the community.
Thank you, Val, and it's so great to know you'll be here permanently. Val's actually a few miles around the corner from me, so
That's great.
kind of exciting.
Yeah.
I would also, when Val asked about what can we do to help, I think if you have confidence in the college, if what you've experienced with the college gives you a sense of, I think they've got their act together up there, I think good things are happening, just encouraging people to go and explore what's there and what might help them, or passing along to families, to children, to nieces and nephews, to the person who mows your lawn, did they think about Berkshire Community College, and is it something they want to explore more, and know that it's a very open and welcoming place, and our intention is to make it as open and transparent but comforting as possible, because we've had students who tell us, I sat in the parking lot, the visitor parking lot, and I just shook. I couldn't even get out of the car. I was so scared to make that first step. So encouraging, we try to do, we've chased people away, down to their car who might have bumped into a little bit of resistance, some extra step that they weren't anticipating, and then they start to doubt that they're meant to be here and that they're not. Maybe this was a mistake, this isn't me. And so trying to create that sense of self-confidence, and that's oftentimes what our mentors can do. Our OLLI mentors can help students with just that sense of self-advocacy, self-esteem, and helping them develop the resilience to figure out when this door is closed, this window is open, and I can go this way instead. So that's what anyone can do to help.
Yeah. Giving hope is a universal plus, right? Passing on the message. So Arline Breskin, do you want to unmute and say a few words about an upcoming OLLI event?
Giving hope is a good thing in this age of not being able to do special events. Is kind of frustrating. So we have created a special event August 25th and 26th. Shay New and Lee is going to do a takeout for us. And then on August 26th at 10 in the morning, Frank and Rachel will do a Zoom class on how to prepare such a meal. We have changed the flyer, and I added a vegetarian dish at the request of a member. So I'm sure you've all gotten the flyer. We have 51 people registered, and we can do 35 each day. If we run over, I'm sure that Rachel and Frank will continue the next Tuesday or Wednesday to do it. So we look forward to having you join us and do a special event.
Wonderful.
Arline. And one of the nice things about it also is that it's supporting local restaurants during a very difficult time. And also, a lot of us are tired of cooking, and it's a way to sort of have a meal together but separately. So you go and you pick up this fabulous 3-course meal at Chez Nous, enjoy it at home, and then gather together on a Zoom to talk about it, to learn about the recipes and hear from the chef. So it's a wonderful idea, and I'm hoping that we'll do more.
I was just going to say, as a South County girl, we really appreciate you supporting the local restaurants. Very important. And Chez Nous food, I think, is one of the most outstanding in the Berkshires. And we have an award today. I think Louise gets the award for the most questions asked, and she has one more. So go ahead, Louise, unmute and ask.
Oh dear. Yes, Ellen, you talked about how the student population has practically dropped by half since the GE heyday, I guess. And I'm wondering, and now it's probably going to drop even more with COVID, unless people really like online. I'm wondering whether BCC is going to be running into real financial difficulties.
Well, thank you for that question, Louise, especially if that's on anyone else's mind. I mean, we've been working very carefully for a number of years and managing our budget and being very mindful. So every time there is a change at the college employment-wise, we look at positions and think about what's changed, what do we need, how do we best support our students. So I feel like at this moment in time, we're okay. The state just commissioned a study to look at all of the public universities and the community colleges for liquidity, to make sure that we were okay, and we were okay with our liquidity for the coming year. But, you know, it's not sustainable in the long term to not, you know, if the state cuts back on its support. So we're very fortunate that a lot of our support comes from the Commonwealth, and if that changed dramatically, that would be make life a little more complicated, that's for sure. So I think the Commonwealth recognizes that, and they've told me this when I've been expressed some concern about some particular program that we would be so small we wouldn't qualify for, that they recognize that this is it in the Berkshires. We play an awful lot of important roles in the county related. Other places have multiple ways to address workforce needs, have multiple ways to address the socioeconomic issues in their community. And they sort of look at us as one of the anchors responding to the entire Berkshire County. And when you think about it, Springfield, I was sharing with someone earlier today, the city of Springfield has 158,000 people in the city of Springfield, and Berkshire County is 126,000 people. So there's a need for us to remain separate and independent as a county for all of the services we provide, from mass hires and One Berkshire and all of those kind of things. But I keep being assured that they recognize the role, which I hope means that they recognize the need to continue to provide support.
I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah. The one other quick thing I didn't mention, and I should have, and it aligns with some of the questions people are asking. We did last year introduce a 15 credit certificate in cannabis. And at the end of that, it was incredibly powerful. We had 19 new students who wouldn't have been coming to us were it not for this course. And those students then had a internship with Berkshire Roots this summer, working in the field, and it gets them a certification. So they needed to get this last piece, and it was, I think, they paid for their license. So it was a pretty exciting course. We're offering it again this fall, but it's another way that we're trying to respond to the opportunity, the career opportunity and employment opportunity needs of Berkshire County. So sorry.
It's quite rigorous, right? They have biochemistry.
The other thing is it's completely online. So we're hoping that others from across the country might see this and could do the course. We have to figure out how they get that internship at the end.
Always the hands-on experience is so important, no matter what you do in the long run, and the socialization and the actual doing of the job. And that's a big part of what BCC does. I loved what Ellen was talking about with that class, even about how to take a successful online class, because that is not intuitive to everyone. So giving our students everything we can to help them succeed, I think, has been a hallmark of your leadership, Ellen, and the BCC brand. And, it's really an honor to have moderated this today. We're sorry that Deborah didn't make it, but if we had to have only one guest, Ellen Kennedy is the one guest to have. So that worked out very well for all of us. And do we have any last questions or ready for a round of applause? We have a welcome to Val for moving. Don't forget about the Shea New event. Louise getting the award for the most questions. Anything else? Anybody last words or anything else you want to add? I did put the NPC of the Berkshires. I'll put it in again. The NPC of the Berkshires, if you don't know them, their website, you can check there. There's also some other volunteer opportunities. And if you're looking for information relating to the nonprofits in Berkshires, that's really the central address to get it all. So I think with that, Megan, any closing comments? Ellen, anything last you want to say?
We'll see you next week for the last class, and also in about an hour and a half, we're going to have an astrophysicist talking about space travel. You're welcome. It's not too late to sign up for that as well. So everyone enjoy their afternoon.
Nothing like an astrophysicist on a weekday in August. So have a great day. Thanks so much. Thanks, Ellen and Megan.
Thank
you.